Hello and welcome to another episode of Intune.training, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune, the Steve and Adam show, with Ben, of course, with special guest, Matt Shadbolt. Matt, hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Doing great.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Very excited. I watch all the videos each fortnight. So, yeah, it's an honor to join a couple of Aussies and you, Adam.
Nice.
And Adam.
All right. Fair enough. I get it. Well, Matt, thank you for growing a beard, for coming on the show. Too bad Ben can't say the same.
I tried.
But so Matt has come to talk to us about some new features in Intune. So I'm not going to spoil any of it. But he's got a whole pile of stuff to talk about. But Matt, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So hi everybody. My name is Matt Shadbolt. I'm a program manager on the Intune team, or the Endpoint Manager team. I'm actually based out in Redmond, Washington. But as you can probably tell, I'm Australian and know a couple of these guys from back in Oz. So I work on what we call the Policy Security and Resource Access team. It is exactly what it sounds like. We do all the policy frameworks within Intune, so all the device configuration, ADMX backed stuff, policy conflicts, reporting around policy, all that sort of stuff, as well as all the security features that we ship. So our ATP integration, the Endpoint Security node that we're going to be talking about today, and then newer to our team is actually the resource access side as well. So by resource access, we're talking about all our VPN strategy, our Wi-Fi and certificates, and so forth. So with policy, security, and resource access all kind of under the same team, we see it kind of like an end-to-end solution, and all of our PMs working together to make sure that device security is really the key. So that's what I do. Specifically, I lead all of the endpoint security side. So anything to do with ATP integration, anything to do with firewall and threat and vulnerability management, Windows Defender AV, all that sort of stuff is led by me. Obviously in close partnership with our Microsoft Defender ATP folks, both here in Redmond and as well as Israel as well.
Awesome. Excellent. That is quite the job description there. I like it.
We're busy here. We're real busy.
And so you also are one of the faces behind the ConfigMgr dogs Twitter handle. Is that correct?
That's right. So the ConfigMgr dog's been going for like almost 9 years now, I think, and started as a TechNet blog before TechNet went away, and that was myself, Ian Bartlett, who continues to work on the Intune team alongside Steve, and George Barakis, who actually works for Azure now. But we all started working as ConfigMgr PFEs about 9 years ago, and started that blog, and we were just blogging ConfigMgr content. It's shifted a little bit away from Configuration Manager and more towards Intune now that we have a lot more focus on Intune. But we don't have a blog anymore. But the ConfigMgr dogs on Twitter are still really active. I'm tweeting all day long, and I actually use it as a really easy way for me to tweet out that we're working on and make sure everybody's aware of the cool stuff that we're shipping, and use it as a channel for feedback and things as well. So it's been very helpful.
And we've also seen that you guys are, or at least you yourself, have some blogs out on the Microsoft Endpoint Tech Community blog. Is that right as well? I say, is that right? So I know that's right. I said that.
That is right. Yeah, that's very accurate.
It's called a leading question there. Right?
I'm trying to conduct an interview and doing very poorly here.
Yeah. So
keep talking.
So obviously with TechNet going away, the platforms for us to start writing and sharing technical content really moved to a couple of channels. There's obviously our formal docs side where for every feature that we have to ship, we have to have really good docs that align with that. But formal docs are a lot of work for us. Believe it or not, we have formal doc writers and so forth that we work with and make sure that the technical content is up to a certain standard so that we can stand behind it and use it as our supported configuration documents and all that sort of stuff. But then there's the blog channel as well, where we can. It's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more casual for us. It's quite easy for me to knock knock out a blog post and go, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is where we're going, without having to go through all the formal rigors of formal documentation. So we definitely post a lot of stuff to the tech community's blog, and it's another good place to be following for all those sort of updates. Much of them I retweet anyway though, so I don't think you have to worry too much about RSS feeds and things like that. If you follow us on Twitter, you'll see all the important updates.
Excellent. Well, and we'll definitely include all the links in our description box below. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's get to the exciting bits. So let's talk about endpoint security and ATP integration and all the cool bits that have just gone GA.
Let's do that. So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
We good? Great. Cool. So I always like to start with this slide when I'm talking about endpoint security. And a lot of endpoint manager and device managers kind of put their hands in the air and go, why are we looking at this slide? This is a Microsoft Defender ATP slide. I don't work in the security team. I work in the the device management team or the PC management team. But I think it's a really good description of the entire Microsoft security stack. And there's some specific things that we'll talk about as to how they impact you guys as device managers and endpoint manager and ConfigMgr gurus, right? And this spider here kind of bucketizes the six, I suppose, main areas where the security value within the Microsoft security stack. And some of these are like unique to E5. So for example, the endpoint detection and response requires an E5 license, but much of it actually doesn't as well. So the Microsoft Defender ATP kind of banner covers the entire security stack that's within the Microsoft ecosystem, right? So things like AV and Firewall all fall under here. The E3 values, the E3 products and E3 customers can make the most of them, but then we try and layer even extra value on top of the Firewall and AV and so forth by adding the E5 SKU and building even more rich and more detailed experiences around them. So this presentation shouldn't preclude anybody who doesn't have E5. I suppose that was my main point. So Don't be worried if you're not paying for E5. There's still lots and lots of value here, and actually probably 90% of the stuff I'm going to show you guys today is all available to all Intune customers with an E3 license as well. So
Ooh, good to know.
That's awesome.
So let me just quickly walk through these 6 buckets and why we actually care about them from an endpoint manager point of view. So if you haven't heard about threat and vulnerability management, the first one on the left here, TVM for short, is a really cool feature that we shipped from the E5 side. So this is an MDATP product where the ATP sensor that's enabled on Windows 10 devices and soon to be Mac devices and so forth actually does vulnerability scanning across the network. So what they'll be looking for is patch states on PCs, applications that have got CVEs against them, misconfigurations in Windows and so forth. And it does TVM's an entire market, and there's many third parties that offer TVM, but this is actually built directly into ATP. So there's no extra agents or anything that need to be deployed to gather all of these misconfigurations and vulnerabilities and so forth. But we know when threats and vulnerabilities are found, it's most likely the security team that's not going to be actually resolving those problems, right? Let's say we find a vulnerability in a VLC application or a line of business application, has got some sort of malicious code or something wrong with it. We know that the security team aren't the ones that are going to go deploy those applications. It's going to be the IT team, right? Yeah. So there's a play here for the IT team to be still involved in the threat and vulnerability management, even if it's most likely the security team that's going to be driving it. And the same goes for the second bucket, our attack surface reduction. So attack surface reduction is trying to reduce the attack surface of a client, right? So it's doing things like blocking PSExec on a client for certain files and things. If PSExec is running on your client, you most likely have something going wrong. There's a whole bunch of attack surface reduction rules and things that we can enable to stop those attacks from even occurring in the first place. But when a false positive or something is found, it's the IT team that the end user calls, right? It's not going to be the security team. It's most likely going to be the IT team who's deploying exceptions to the ASR rules and so forth. Yep. And take device control, for example. Device control falls under this attack surface reduction as well. This is like, allowing or blocking USB drives, known or unknown USB drives. Again, it's not the security team that knows what the IT team are purchasing in terms of the standard USB drives. They're not the ones who are going to know the device IDs for those. It's going to be the IT team. So there's a place to play for them there. Next gen protection is very similar. Next gen protection actually covers all of the more traditional security features in Windows as well. So this is your firewall, the BitLocker encryption, and also the Windows Defender AV. Again, the attack surface reduction and next gen protection are all available for E3 as well. So this is all available for the vast majority of customers. But AV exclusions are managed by the IT team. They're not managed by the security team. Firewall ports are managed by the IT team, not the security team. Because if an application breaks because somebody's blocked a port, who's going to be screamed at? It's going to be the IT folks and the help desk folks, right? Endpoint detection and response is probably the jewel in the ATP crown. This is where it's doing all the behavioral analytics and so forth about what's going on with clients. Are we seeing past the hashes? Are we seeing lateral movement across the network and so forth? But the IT team is the one who's generally going to be looking after the client health for these clients, right? How many of my devices are EDR enrolled versus aren't? Is somebody trying to maliciously unenroll the EDR agent? Do we need to go back and enforce that? Do we need to make sure that our risk scores and so forth are connected to conditional access? So if ATP is not active, do we blocking access to Exchange Online and so forth? So this is still a place for the IT team to play there. The last two are really specific to the security teams. Auto IR is when a malicious actor is found, or we see something malicious going on in a client, how does the security team automatically react to that? The IT team obviously need to know about when things are automatically occurring and so forth. So we have some integrations there. And then finally, the Microsoft Threat Experts, actually a service that we offer from at Microsoft for E5 customers, where when something malicious is happening and the SOC or the security admin or the SecOps person doesn't quite understand what's going on, they can reach out to these threat experts and actually just ask for advice and so forth. So that's kind of like that's the Microsoft security stack. As I mentioned, like there's for each one of these silos here, there's a real part that the IT teams need to play in that, and that's really been all of the stuff that we've been working on the endpoint security node for the past close to 12 months. Is how do we complement these awesome security features from the SecOps team to provide some experiences for the Sec admin or the IT admin who maybe isn't as deeply knowledgeable about security, and provide them the tools that they need to support their SecOps teams.
Matt, before you move off of this, can you recap the license requirement for each of the categories?
Yeah, so the threat and vulnerability management is absolutely an E5 product. Attack surface reduction and the next gen protection is generally an E3 product value. If it's generally in the Intune console and configurable, it's something that's available for E3. There are some caveats here. So for example, the tamper protection features that we shipped just not long ago is an E5 value as well, even though that kind of fits under the next gen protection. So it's not as black and white as these individual silos being E5 or E3. But as I mentioned, we kind of offer that step up value, right? So you've got the awesome Defender AV service and everything that comes with it. But if you have E5, then we can provide tamper protection on top of that. And happy to talk more about how tamper protection things works as well. EDR, Auto IR, and the Microsoft Threat Experts are all E5 products and features. And you won't have any use of using those unless you have E5 licenses anyway. Okay, good. Helpful.
That is a whole lot of tools that just come with E5. I like it.
It is, yeah. So I've just got a couple more slides, and then let me jump into a demo. As I mentioned, like one of the big concepts and one of the things that we're driving is trying to really improve the security team and IT teams cooperation and ability to execute on the security postures, right? So we know that traditionally security teams and IT teams haven't liked each other, right? Us and the Endpoint Manager team, have traditionally just spoken to IT folks who are really worried about end user experience experience. They're worried about cost because they've got help desk overheads. They're worried about deploying agents and having to keep them healthy and all those sort of things. And security teams really don't care about a lot of that sort of stuff. Like they report into a CISO. They're outside of the IT org, and really they're gold on just making sure that everything's secure. If you asked any security folk, they would much prefer to have no BY. They prefer to have no mobile devices. They prefer to have everything locked down and contained.
No
but we
network.
know that from the network. Yeah, exactly. Port hardening and all those sort of things to make sure that nobody can do work outside of their strict control, right? Which is fine. That's what their that's their job. But we know from the IT point of view, it's just not acceptable, right? So we've seen a lot in the past, and I'm sure you guys have had similar experiences where these two teams are just butting heads, right? Security wants a lockdown, IT needs some flexibility. Security want patching done 0 day, but that's just not not possible for a lot of people. The IT team don't want to be deploying all these agents and managing client health and so forth. So a lot of the endpoint security stuff that we've been doing with the ACP team has been trying to break down that brick wall, right? So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're going agentless, for example, right? So for TVM, the vast majority of customers, if they're using third party, have a TVM specific agent that they need to manage. They then have an AV agent, they have a firewall agent, they do some sort of third party disk encryption. They're doing attack surface reduction rules and device control rules. They're doing all of these sorts of security features, layering different agents on top of it. So the first thing that we did in terms of the strategy is, if somebody's buying Microsoft 365, we want to make sure that we exploit the the integration that we have with the operating system, in that we don't want to lay any more agents down. We want to make sure that we're integrated with all of the business tools like Office and Exchange Online and so forth, so that with the attack surface reduction and all of the DLP controls that we have in Office 365, that it's just integrated like that as well. There's no extra firewalls or appliances that need to be applied to do email security, for example. And then we wanted to make sure that the management was all integrated as well. We don't want to have silos. We don't want to have the security team using one tool and the IT team using a different tool. We want to make sure that we build the best experiences that really exploit that platform and the ability for those two teams to work together in the same console. And that's the goal of the Endpoint Security Manager, the Endpoint Security, the blade within Endpoint Manager. We want all of the SecAdmin work, so the configuration, the management, the high-level reporting of if things are turned on and off, to be all from the Microsoft Endpoint Manager console. And as I mentioned, we want to exploit the management stack that we already have in place too, right? We have a lot of devices that are managed by Intune, being cloud managed, but also even more devices that are just on-prem with Configuration Manager as well. When you look to our competitors, they don't have this platform of enterprise customers using our management tools already. So from a SecAdmin point of view and a security point of view, when they come across their M365 E5 and want to start building on the security configuration, there's no more agents, right? It's all just already managed. We're already worrying about one client health. We're not having to worry about anything else around deployment and management of that. So this is the vision, is for our security management and monitoring to come out of the Endpoint Security Blade in Endpoint Manager, a flow down to our Intune standalone devices, as you would expect. They flow down to our Intune co-managed devices for those customers who want to co-manage their Windows 10 devices from ConfigMgr. But then, and so I'll show you some examples of this later. The future is for us to have those same sort of authoring and management experiences for totally disconnected ConfigMgr managed clients, including servers, right? So we could have data centers full of Windows servers and eventually Linux servers that you'll be able to manage all from this cloud console without those ConfigMgr clients ever having to touch the internet.
Whoa! I'm sorry, you're going to have to back up and say that all over again, because I don't think anybody heard it, and they're not going to rewind. So we need to stop right here and say that one more time. That is important.
Yeah, so I'll show a demo later about how it works. But essentially, what happens is, all the authoring and management experiences come from the web console, right? Once a policy or a configuration or something is being created, we actually just deliver that down to the ConfigMgr site. The Config Manager service isn't talking directly to any of these clients. We deliver down a package to the Config Manager site, and then the Config Manager clients talk directly with their management points and whatever services that they need to be able to apply that configuration without ever having to tell Intune, right? And then the reporting channel flows in the opposite direction, right? So the Config Manager clients send their reporting and their status to the Config Manager database, and the Config Manager database syncs it back up to us. So these devices and these servers and these clients can be like totally connected from the internet. They could be ATMs or they could be medical equipment or whatever they are. As long as they got line of sight to their management point, they can talk to Config Manager. We'll eventually be able to do all that security management.
That's awesome.
Very neat.
Cool.
So it's baby steps today. So we released a blog post just this week that we moved to public preview for the first payload, which is our endpoint detection and response payload. So as I mentioned before, like the first thing that the vast majority of our E5 customers want to do is get onboarded to ATP. So what we're allowing is in this graphic for you to be able to create those EDR onboarding policies and deploy them down to those offline or disconnected and non-cloud connected clients. And that's really the first payload that we're working through. Our Config Manager and Intune teams are working super hard at the moment to light up those next policies. The next policy will most likely be the Windows Defender AV policy, which seems to be the one that everybody else wants to do for their Config Manager clients. And then shortly following that, we're looking at the tamper protection policies as well, which we can't do today with Configuration Manager standalone. It's only an Intune, enabled feature. But with this, this tenant attach experience, you'll be able to do tamper protection for those offline clients as well.
So you just made me. I'm my head is racing here as I'm thinking because of the possibilities here. Okay, but. I've had this thought of, okay, so tenant attach, and I know you're going to get into a demo on it. So tenant attach is where you can take Config Manager clients, and it's almost co-managed, but not. It's where it's fully managed by Config Manager, but it allows you to see and interact with that device object from the Intune console. But the important bit that I guess I wasn't quite. I've messed with it. I've messed with the Config Manager admin service, and I know there's some pieces in the back end that all connect together for that. But the idea here is that your servers are not directly talking to the Intune console and communicating to it, and that's not how they're showing up in the console. It's a sync to the central to your site server, to your management point, and then a sync from there into Intune. And when you're doing the sync policy from the tenant attached items in the console, in the Intune console, you're sending that signal to the server, to your Config Manager server, and then it's triggering that same signal down to those clients. So it is proxying, and so those devices are not directly talking to the cloud. And I think that's important for server admins to recognize. We're not exposing your devices to the internet here with tenant attach.
That is exactly the goal of tenant attach, right? And really, the key thing to understand is the client communication. That's the most important part, right? When you enable co-management, you swing across those sliders. What happens? The client does an MDM enrollment. It does an Azure AD join, or it's a hybrid join, or whatever it is. But anyway, there's an Azure AD registration from that client. When those sliders start sliding across, all of that configuration then starts happening from the Intune service down directly to the client via the MDM channel, right? That's how co-management works. Now, with tenant attached, the client communication doesn't change from what it's currently doing today. Nothing changes, right? The Config Manager client continues talking to Configuration Manager just like it is. The difference is that Config Manager is now proxying all that information, reporting, device status, and so forth up into the Intune cloud, so that when you come to that web console and when you come to the Endpoint Manager console, you don't really care what the management channel is, right? Yeah. There's a Config Manager management channel and there's a co-management channel, which is using direct service to client communication. So really the key thing to remember is the client communication. Tenant attached, the clients aren't talking to Intune. It's Config Manager that's talking to Intune.
Awesome. So really what you're doing is you're moving a big co-management slider by enabling tenant attach, in that your Config Manager servers are now co-managed essentially, because you're pushing policies down to them that they then push down to, anyway, that's silly, but that is what is happening. you're moving the
awesome.
slider, so you now can co-manage your config manager server side of things, the actual management pieces, moving pieces of your console to the cloud.
I think the important word is more attach. Like if we keep conflating and like overusing co-management, like the people get super confused.
Good work,
right?
Adam.
It's
good work, Adam.
Like the core of co-management is that an MDM enrollment happens from the client, right? That is what co-management is. Sliders and so forth really only tell the client what the authority for that particular configuration piece is, right? Slide that endpoint security slider, the endpoint protection slider, and now Intune can manage all of these security related configuration policies. But it's not ConfigMgr that's doing that. It's really the client that is checking in and telling us what features should Intune be authoritative on, right? When it comes to the tenant attached stuff, it really is the ConfigMgr server attached to the Intune service, and that's it. Like there's no communication from the client point of view at all. It's just attaching. And in terms of like actually attaching, it's probably, if you're using co-management today, you've probably already done it anyway. You just need to enable the device sync, and then we'll start syncing those device objects. But there isn't an Azure AD join. There isn't an MDM object. Intune has no control over the physical device in a tenant attached scenario like you would in the co-management side. Everything's left to Configuration Manager.
Very cool.
So
I know it's really hard to get their head around it, especially because we keep renaming stuff as well, and we try and simplify things, but we a lot of the efforts that we've had in the last couple of years is really trying to meet customers where they're at, right? And, everybody wants to continue using ConfigMgr. There's lots of scenarios where it's not appropriate for those clients to be directly connected to the internet, and not they have no need or no desire for those ATMs or medical equipment to do an MDM enrollment. So we're trying to close those gaps and provide this, and we think it's probably a little bit more work to do, but we think that the future direction is a righteous one.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's clear on this or not. So what is the relationship between I may already know the answer to this, but I'm doing this for everyone else who's listening, so because they may have this question, right? What is the relationship between tenant attach and Intune licensing, and then the next piece of that is, can we get this type of functionality, the stuff that you talked about on the first slide, without tenant attach or without co-management, like without going into Intune? So what are we looking at there?
Yeah, so it's always risky talking about licensing, so I'll be as vague as possible, because as you guys know, like I'll just get myself in trouble, and I believe Brad Anderson at Ignite last year said that every Configuration Manager client will be allowed to sync into the Intune service, and provided an Intune license. So there's no issue in terms of syncing all of those devices into the cloud. You shouldn't be too worried about that at all. As long as you're an E3 Intune licensed customer, that's going to be enabled and allowed for you, no problem. In terms of the co-management piece versus tenant attach, and does any of this value come without co-management? The clear answer is no. The best and most complete story for endpoint security that we have today is with co-management, because we've built all of this for MDM already. And when you swing across that endpoint security or endpoint protection slider, all of these scenarios that I'll demo shortly light up for you, right? So we absolutely want everybody to go out and enable co-management, because you're going to get all the conditional access piece. You're going to get all of the endpoint analytics stuff. You're going to get all of the stuff that we've been building for the longest amount of time. So absolutely swing those co-management sliders across and get Intune, especially for security. Like, this is such an easy thing for you to move across to be managing the security configuration. And day one, like tomorrow, it'll all work nicely. The tenant and attached side is really to try and complement that. I think it's really, there's the vast majority of organizations have a certain percentage of their clients that just can't be co-managed. Servers, for one. Servers is a great example. We can't co-manage a server because there's no MDM stack on it, right?
Yeah.
So for that particular situation, we know that customers still want to see the AV and EDR status and have all those same things available in that same console. So that's where the tenant attached side comes in, right? Those clients don't need to do co-management. They don't need to do an Azure registration or an MDM registration, and then they get all that same sort of single pane of glass experience for those. So continue doing co-management, augment that, add extra value with the tenant attached stuff. Tenant attached is much more than just just security products too as well. So I know the team have been working on things like forcing a machine check-in or software inventory, hardware inventory, and so forth as well. So a whole bunch of those help desk scenarios are showing up in this web console, so that your help desk folks don't need to install the ConfigMgr client to to reinstall applications and so forth. So
I believe that Brad even demoed that demoed pushing an app. Doing the instant app approval and install from the console via ConfigMgr on Tenant attached. So
yeah, there's huge potential for us, right? But I have to stress, it's really not one or the other. It's not co-management or this. It's really both. Use them both to to build up this management layer across every device in the organization.
So I'll ask one more, and then I promise I'll let you go to the next slide. As you can tell, I'm interested in this. This is great.
Pick the config manager guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm not sorry. Okay. So, because I see these kind of questions come up all the time, because there are still people out there that believe that we're supposed to move away from ConfigMgr, and it's Microsoft's pushing us to Intune, and no, we're not going to Intune because it doesn't have the same features and all this sort of stuff, and and none of that's true. But I'm looking at it saying, okay, so if I don't license my users for Intune, I should still be able to do co-management, because as you mentioned earlier, all of our devices should, if you have a ConfigMgr license, you have an Intune license for the device. And then with Tenant attached, that allows us to handle attaching our servers and as well, and any of the non-ConfigMgr or non-Intune co-managed devices. So in theory, I could, not that I would, some people may want to do this, but that you could slice off a small piece of this and say, I just want to take what's free or what's included in my ConfigMgr license, and not go the full-blown Intune management route and have users licensed and all that sort of stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. So there's as you mentioned, configuration manager is going nowhere, right? Like we're developing on top of ConfigMgr. You see all this stuff. Like there's so much development going on in configuration manager. It's just crazy, right? And I don't know how many times DJM has to say it's going nowhere, but we keep saying it again, it's going nowhere. Again, I think it's really meeting customers where they're at and where they want to be, right, at the same time. So customers who want to continue using ConfigMgr and have it isolated and not use the centralized cloud console for the cloud managed as well as on-prem, you're welcome to do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. If you just want to purchase ConfigMgr licenses and just run ConfigMgr, then happy days, not a problem at all. But we have two teams working on Configuration Manager and Intune, being the Microsoft Endpoint Manager console and concept, and the vast majority of the investment is coming for that joined experience, right? For the customers who do want to use some parts of the cloud as well as all the stuff on-prem, then there's a lot of investment going there for them. Not to say there's no investment for on-prem stuff. You've seen all the the task sequence changes that have been happening recently. Lots of on-prem software update features that aren't cloud attached and aren't connected to Intune in any way. That will continue going as is, but if we want to have these rich consolidated integrated experiences with cloud and on-prem, then obviously you need to connect it up to the Endpoint Manager console.
Excellent. This is exciting. I like it.
Should we jump into a demo and I can start showing you some of this stuff?
Yeah, please.
I love demos.
All right. So
I don't know if you realize this, Matt, but that there's a rule on Intune training: the demo can't be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it looks like it's going well, just hit the power button. We can't have you break our streak.
Unplug something.
I feel like I'm going to faint in my room here. Actually, it's so hot. So if I look all red and sweaty, I apologize. But it's a beautiful day here in Seattle, and I've been locked in my bedroom, which is now my home office since 8 o'clock this morning. So Okay, let me just show a demo, and we can please again jump in and stop me wherever I'm going too fast or there's questions. But first, I just wanted to show you the left nav that we shipped with what was the old DMAC console, the device management. I can't remember what the old
Admin
acronym is.
center. Yeah.
That's the one, which is now the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. We shipped this with this new left nav back in, I believe, December timeframe. So we used to have a whole bunch of stuff down the left nav, like ebooks and device configuration, just a whole bunch of confusing stuff. And we actually did a whole bunch of market research and end user studies and things like that around what a left nav should look like. And these were really the pivots that we took based on the admin persona, right? So we know that every organization's got a device admin. We know that there's an apps team that are creating line of business apps and deploying them and managing updates and things like that. We know that multiple teams need to jump in and do reporting and things like that. And then there's always like one or two people in that organization that manage the service as a whole, right? So we kind of pivoted around personas, but we kind of took a big bet around most organizations will have some sort of sec admin as well. They'll have somebody who is dedicated to doing security deployments and administration. So we build out this endpoint security node, and the goal of this endpoint security node again is to build all those dedicated sec admin experiences in here. Much of the configuration that are in these policies and so forth are available elsewhere in the Intune console. Like you look at the all devices list, this is exactly the same as the all devices list that's in devices. But we put it in here because we know that a sec admin that's coming in and looking at like AV exclusions or making sure the firewalls are configured correctly and so forth need the ability to look at their device status and see what's being configured, right? They don't want to switch across to the devices view, which is built for the device admin. They want to see it all in the one place. So this is our all in one place, right? So devices are exactly the same view as you would see over there. You'll have all the same sort of remote actions like reboot machines, run Defender scans, updates, all those sort of things, directly from in here. Security baselines, I'm sure you're well aware of security baselines. And the goal of our security baselines is to really give customers like a quick start on configuring those to what we suggest at Microsoft. Believe it or not, the Intune team aren't the ones who define the settings in the baselines. We leave that for the SMEs across the organization. So the same two guys who created the GPO baseline for Windows 10 are the same ones who defined our MDM baseline. They don't work for Intune. They don't work for MEM. The ATP baseline was defined by the ATP team. We're not the product experts of ATP and how sample submission should be configured. It's the ATP team that tell us that. We're just really the infrastructure of delivering those settings down to them. Same as the Edge baseline, so the new Edge Anaheim browser, all the suggested security settings in there come from the Edge team. It's not us defining them. And then the Office one, which is still in development at the moment, is coming from the Office team. So we cut new versions of these every time the Windows folks tell us, hey, we've got some new guidance. We've had a couple of changes to the ATP baseline based on customer feedback that was coming to the ATP team, and then the new Edge baselines come out every now and then as well. But I really see these as like a starting point for a lot of organizations to understand what Microsoft's best practice is, deploy them out, and then use all of these new policies to kind of complement and fill the gaps that the security baselines aren't covering. Questions on baseline?
Yeah. Yes. So, Steve, do you remember a conversation we had with someone at MMS?
You're trying to make me remember something.
Very descriptive.
Was this at Jazz?
Jazz. We talked to one of the product group folks about baselines, I believe, and I think it was. Anyway, we had this idea of using baselines in a way that you could subscribe to them and basically see deltas. So take the baseline. So like it's the way we do it with our GPOs. We take the baseline, we don't touch it. And then we can swap that in and out, and we have our Delta policy over the top. But then, having a way to subscribe to and then like adopt the new baseline, maybe that exists already. So yeah, you're gonna show me that now.
So we've got a couple of things. Like we know change management is hard with security baselines, and we absolutely don't want to like upgrade people's baselines without them understanding what's changed and what the impact is, right? So when we change, you can see these different versions here from 1 to 3 to 4. When we change them, we don't automatically update these baselines because maybe the guidance has changed and we've changed something from a to a true to a false. If we went and just upgraded those baseline profiles for customers, like stuff would just start breaking, right? So we built in some basic versioning where you can actually upgrade these particular baselines. We also built some comparing functionality as well. So let's say we've got, hey, old version 3 and version 4, what's actually changed there, right? So you can actually click that and we'll give you a CSV output. A lot of people don't know that this is available, right? So maybe there's room to, you can see here, these settings are all equal. I think a couple at the bottom are not equal. This one setting was the only one that changed for this baseline version. We tell you it used to be true and now it's false, right? So you can go in and have a look at this and make sure the baseline is up to your understanding and expectations of what's going to break and what's not going to break before actually upgrading those baselines. So we built all that functionality in there as well. I believe we also added the ability to duplicate these profiles as well, which is something that we shipped last month. So maybe what you would want to do is duplicate the current baseline that you're using today, upgrade it, deploy it to a handful of devices, and then see what happened, and use that as a trigger to go off and update it. So we're trying to build tools to help you guys manage the versioning and change there. We also, every time a baseline is released, we document all the changes in our doc side as well. So if you've been to the security baselines doc, it's getting really, really long because every time we cut a new version, there might be 15 or 20 different settings going in there. So I'd suggest monitoring those and watching those as well. If you wanted to automate some of this stuff, I'm not sure how far you could go with Graph in terms of doing the automation of that. But we've tried to build some pretty manual tools to at least help you a little bit in terms of what the risk of upgrading different baselines is.
Very cool.
Cool. All right, let me talk about security tasks just really briefly. This is one of those E5 values that I mentioned before. This is really the integration with the threat and vulnerability management stuff that we had. So when a SecOps person finds a VLC, or I've just used VLC media player 1,000 times here, a VLC version, that's out of date in their organization, but we're working on the configuration side as well. But it might be a Notepad++ has got some open source binary that was compromised 3 or 4 years ago, and there's a handful of devices that are using an old version of Notepad++. Again, we don't want the security team upgrading those applications because they don't know what the impact might be. VLC's used, got a whole bunch of open source binaries that are used in corporate video editing software. So if we go and upgrade those, there's a whole bunch of stuff going to break from the end user's point of view. So what we wanted to do is build like a bridge between that SecOps guy and or guy or girl and the security tasks here. So this is what happens, right? The SecOps person notices that vulnerable app. They see that there's five devices that have got that. They go off and do the research and go like, this CV is bad. We need the IT team to upgrade it. They click a button in the SecOps console, and then one of these is created in the Intune side. So you can see here, if I click on this, the IT team will see that there's an update to VLC that's needed. You can see that there's 61 known vulnerabilities. You can click on the impacted devices here, and we'll show you the device list of which devices actually need this update compared to others. Maybe others aren't actually vulnerable and don't need it. And then from the managed app, if it's an app that you've already created before, so if there's some version of VLC media player in your Intune tenant, you click on that and we'll actually drop you directly into the app itself.
That's cool.
So from the IT team's point of view, all they need to do is go into properties. They need to edit or update the package, and then those devices that were already targeted by it, will then update, install, and then over on the SecOps side, they'll see that the update's been updates have been taken. We also build just like a really basic level of like change management and tracking and reporting here as well. So you can see the alias or the UPN of the IT team guy who's picked up the case and is going to go off and do them, and then they can send some status back and forth in terms of this is mitigated. It should be clear on your side now.
Yeah, nice.
Matt, I know you're not asking for feature requests, but I'm asking anyway. Does it tell you who created the task?
It does.
So that you could go and talk to that person or whatever.
Yep. So we've got a request.
Okay, there it is. Okay.
Well. Yep.
Yep.
So we've got a requester here as well. The team, I believe, has already shipped or is close to shipping ServiceNow integration from the SecOps side as well. So you can tick the box to say send it to Intune, but also to send it to ServiceNow so that it's in our tracking systems and so forth. But yeah, it really it's just trying to make that the days to mitigation and remediation as close as possible. And again, as I mentioned before, break down those walls between those two teams.
That's really cool.
Cool. Okay, so now comes into the more fun stuff and the stuff that we shipped and GA'd just a couple of weeks ago, and that's our endpoint security policy types. So why did we want to build these? The main real reason is everybody hated the old endpoint protection profile, right? There was this old profile in device configuration that had every single configuration, every single security setting in it. It was this, I call it monolith policy, and you would configure firewall, ASR, you would configure what else? Exploit guard, cred guard, BitLocker, everything in this one policy. And then when something failed in it, it was just a pain to go and check what was causing those problems.
Isn't that the one that we couldn't find the other day, Steve?
No, probably.
You were looking for Windows Defender AV, and that's actually another good point. The Windows Defender AV isn't in the endpoint protection profile; it's in the device restrictions profile. So from a customer point of view, and obviously, it kind of vindicated all the work I've been doing when I was watching that video, because you guys couldn't find the settings that you wanted. You wanted to configure AV, and you couldn't find it.
Yep.
So the goal of this is for us to have it in all in one location, so it's super obvious as to where it all should be, but also build like scenario specific experiences for each one of these, right? We know customers who are coming across from a third party when they're moving to M365 for security. We know that they have a certain expectation of that SecAdmin experience, right? They don't want to be in the in the devices node. They want to have AV reports. They want to have certain things, configuration experiences for firewall, for example. Like they're used to certain sort of things, and we're trying to build all those experiences in this console here. So for antivirus, for example, you come in here and you create a new policy. We have Mac OS or Windows 10. I'm just going to select Windows 10. The Defender antivirus policy is all the AV settings. The Windows security experience policy is all the end user experience settings that we have available in the console. So the Windows security app shows things like allow a user to run a quick scan, or allow a user to see the firewall status. We can block all that sort of stuff, but it also includes tamper protection as well. So if we don't want to allow users to stop the the anti-malware services, we would enable tamper protection that would stop that. So that's all included in there. But just for this quick demo, the Defender AV policy is what we'll start with. Let's go with just Defender AV. So rather than that big, huge monolith policy, we've just got all the AV settings. We split them out into the correct categories, so they're really obvious as to what we're going to be doing in here. We have the real-time protection stuff. We have the AV exclusions. How we're going to handle updates, those sort of things. And then it's as simple as just kind of walking through this and deploying it, just like any other Intune policy. We also, for this particular policy, finally enabled tri-state for all of these settings as well. So if you remember the old policies, we had what we used to call dual state. So we'd have like enable or block and then not configured. And that were the only two states that we'd support. We had lots of customers say, why don't you support a tri-state, which is, block, allow, and not configured. We want to be able to block things sometimes, and we want to allow them in other times. Without going too deep, there's lots of history there in terms of how these settings were configured and built in Intune, but we're slowly going across all the endpoint security policies, these ones that that I showed before, that I am showing, and we're going to convert those all to tri-state as well, so that you'll be able to configure and not configure as much as you want. So that'll be coming over the coming months. We have challenges around graph and like supportability of APIs and things like that make it a lot harder than it would be obvious. We get all the time, why can't you just add that extra state? It's unfortunately not that simple. But it doesn't. Over the coming months, we'll be converting every one of the settings that we have in the endpoint security node, so in these new policies, over to tri-state at least, so that you can do whatever you need to do.
And sorry, question on that. So I assume this is the way this works. So if you've previously configured it and then you now go with the not configured options, I assume it is smart enough to be able to go and and remove those settings and unset them?
Not necessarily. So one of the things that we're building at the moment is you saw the upgrade experience that I showed you before for the security baselines. We want to have a lightweight version for these sort of policies here as well. So then when we do go off and create that tri-state, we won't change anything in your policy, but we'll allow you to upgrade those. And then at that point, you can decide whether or not you want that third state available, and you need to make sure that it's not going to have any impact on you on the business. And at that point, you can pull the trigger. We never ever want to force these changes on a customer, because we could never understand the hundreds of thousands of our customers' potential impact by changing without allowing you guys to be in control. So any time that we release a message center post saying you need to go off and do this, it's because we don't want to break any of your stuff. It's up to you guys to understand what the change is that we need and make sure that there's no risk there.
Nice.
Cool.
But a part of that, and it's a good segue into that duplicate policy feature as well. One of the things that we're trying to use as a way to help you guys mitigate that risk is providing policy duplication. It seems really simple, but we weren't able to do a lot of that until we moved into this new endpoint security node. But the goal of the endpoint security duplicate is that I can just go dupe. I could give it a version number, I could give it a date, I could give it whatever I want, and then whatever was configured previously in that particular configuration policy is now available in this as well. So this will allow you guys to go off and deploy those changes and check them before doing the upgrades and understand what's going on in there. We also know things like AV exclusions, for example, are a bit of a pain to manage when you've got huge policies and you want to test a change, for example. You want to remove that AV exclusion today without breaking everybody. Policy duplication and things like that are really helpful from a security administrator's point of view.
Nice. So I have a really quick question on this one. So now that we've got this sort of tri-state scenario, does this solve the problem that I've ran into myself, where I have an old device restriction policy or a device endpoint protection policy or whatever? I've had a setting changed from not configured to either allow or block, and the ability to unset that.
Exactly. That's exactly the goal of that. Of the tri-state, right?
Yeah.
I think a good one was Firewall, right? So we would have this setting called Firewall, and it was either allow or not configured. Now, not configured by default on Windows is to be turned on, but the user can change it, right? They can turn it on or off. So we shipped the feature to turn it on, but not the ability to turn it off, right? That's that classic tri-state scenario that we're solving there, right?
Yeah.
So in the situation that a user calls up the help desk and says, this app that I really need right now isn't working, I can't turn the firewall off. This policy being allowed to use that third state will allow you to turn it off quickly, unblock the user while you understand what's going on with the app, and that is exactly what the goal is.
Yeah, it was just funny because I was doing it programmatically through Graph, and the error that I was getting back was that not configured was not a possible value in the schema, even though if you just create the policy brand new, the value is not configured, so it's not allowed to be there. It is there.
not configured from a tech point of view is actually really interesting because it does a bunch of different things. In certain cases, like if you create a new policy, for example, I'm going way too deep here, but if you create a new policy, for example, with not configured, a setting not configured, we just don't send anything to the client. Right?
Sure.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But what if I have a setting that was set and then I go in and change it to not configured? Should I just stop sending that? In fact, for the vast majority of the settings, we actually do a delete on the client. So we actually remove the previous setting. So not configured is actually pushing something. It's actually doing something in certain situations. So there's, it's sometimes not as obvious about the complexity of some of these settings and how they work as it might be.
Matt, you just covered a thing that it took us a while to sort this out one day. We'd done a captured image, a reference image, and someone had hard-coded in group policy registry entries into baked it into the image, as people do for whatever reason.
Sure.
I don't know. And we kept running into this thing where we couldn't. I don't remember what it was, but there was a setting that needed to be not configured, and because the on and the off and the not configured, all three of them behaved completely differently. They had different things, and you from the group policy perspective, not configured doesn't remove the setting.
Yeah.
And so then we couldn't revert the registry entry. We had to go and physically delete, find and delete them all. And so I think that's very, very important to be able to explicitly say, to take every setting in that policy and say, this is what I want it to be, and I want it to override any other setting that exists in that space, so that it's enforcing what I am setting in this policy, not what some, a conflicting policy or someone manually configured for me.
Yeah, we actually call that we call that process tattoo removal, where we go off and we remove the tattooing of the policy, and it's actually one of the value props of using MDM over group policy, right? Like once you send down a group policy setting, they're not configured, like it doesn't clean up after itself. So
sure.
The tattoo removal, as well as obviously the MDM status reporting is two of the main reasons why our customers move to using MDM configuration over GPOs. So I'm glad you found some value in it.
Now, just one last one on this is when I unassign a policy or unenroll a device from Intune, does it also go through and tattoo removal itself?
We should do. Yep, absolutely, we should do. So we've double checked and triple checked every single configuration setting in the endpoint security node to make sure that the tattoo removal works correctly. Like we know that from a security point of view, like we can't compromise in terms of what the expected state is on the client. When we talk to our ATP folks and customers who are using this as a security product, like we need to make sure that it's super reliable. I can't speak for the other couple of thousand other settings that they all work consistently, but they should. So if you're finding settings that aren't doing tattoo removal, raise a CSS support case and say this setting is not tattoo removing, and then we'll eventually get up the chain and somebody will fix it.
That's cool, because I mean this was in a conversation I had on a forum earlier this week, as someone said, oh yeah, it doesn't clean up after itself, so when you unenroll and stuff. So good to know.
Just awesome. Be careful in edge scenarios as well. So like if you're seeing one device that's not tattoo removing, that's maybe a problem. If you're seeing all of your devices not tattoo removed, then that is a problem, right? The Windows MDM stack can be a little bit unreliable sometimes, especially when you're doing things like unenrollment. Sometimes registry keys and things don't consistently clean up. But if you're seeing a behavior where you've made a mistake and you want to remove that policy and it's not being removed from the clients, that's a good support case for us.
Good to know. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. We going okay for time, guys? I can just keep talking.
Go as long as you want. People can stop the video when they want.
Great. So let me just show you the other thing that we shipped just this week, which is the inline reporting as well. So we know, as I mentioned, we know an antivirus administrator wants all their stuff together. They don't want to have to go off to different nodes and different places to find the status and so forth. So in the summary screen, we have our policies here, and then in the Windows 10 unhealthy endpoints report, we have a new report which shows all the devices that are unhealthy. It's showing in this example, this is a report for all the devices that don't meet the clean state, which is a state that Windows Defender AV has. So if any device in my organization is either requiring a full scan, a reboot, manual steps, offline, or there's something really wrong with it, they'll show up in this report. And the goal of this report is for us to, at an organizational level, show a handful of devices that are in a dodgy state. These 9 devices need to be rebooted for the malicious files to be cleaned up properly, and then hopefully you get into a state like I am here, where none of my devices are showing up, which means everything's healthy. All right. So we'll be building some other reports over in the reporting node shortly, which will show all the clean status. We know that you need to obviously report to CISOs and managers and things to say 100% of my devices are clean. But this view here is really for that AV admin to come in, manage their policies, manage their exceptions, and then make sure their devices are in a clean state.
I like that you didn't clutter up the menu with all the list with all the clean stuff. That's nice. That's good. But having a list to provide to that manager that says, well, no data is no data. Show me the data. Like, that's important too.
Yeah,
I'm going to know at least one person that I work with that's going to want that one. So
yeah, we know everybody needs to justify their job, right? Everybody needs to say everything's clean. I'm doing a good job, boss. But we also know that a different person who is most likely the one running the report, it needs to come in here and actually keep these devices clean. So, for a customer like MSIT, our internal Microsoft team, Microsoft support team, they've got like 600,000 devices. A list of 600,000 clean devices here isn't helpful for them. They just want to see the handful that they need to go off and clean up. So that's AV. We're expecting to do a similar thing in the short to medium term for each one of these left nav nodes here as well. So for disk encryption, for example, we'll have a tab for all of our BitLocker status reports and our Firewall reports. We want to do the same thing for Firewall, for example. So show me all the devices that don't have the firewall turned on, or show me all the devices that don't have the domain profile turned on, and things like that. So that's all work in progress. The first kind of prototype and the one that we've been focusing on has been AV because we from our customers they tell us it's the most important, but we're also doing a bunch of stuff around Firewall as well. So we know that the firewall management has been not necessarily the best experience in the past. I think it was probably only like November time frame last year that we started supporting firewall rules, which is a key need for our customers. And Configuration Manager still doesn't support firewall rules. It's just the firewall profile. So interestingly, so what we've done is we've actually for obviously OS Mac OS as well as Windows 10, but what we've done for the new Endpoint Security profiles is actually split them out into two different policies, and there's good reason for that. So what we found is talking to customers is that they generally want to have one policy for the vast majority of their organization, which just turns firewall on. And just enables the most basic things like we want the domain, private, and public profile enabled for every single device. And that's going to be for everybody. But then we want another experience where we're going to have firewall rules for different business units, for example. So there might be a firewall rule policy for the devices that are in building 121 here in Redmond. There might be a different firewall policy for a firewall rules policy for the 122 because they got different subnets and different needs and different different ports that might need to be open. Or maybe they do it at the application level. So maybe I have a firewall rule policy for everything that is in Teams. There's 5 ports need to be open for Teams, and these 3 executables need to be whitelisted. So we build those out, and then we want them to all to layer on top of each other, so we can have the org-wide rules, merging with the business unit specific rules and so forth. So we found that the easiest way for us to do that is to build 2 different policy types. So if I create a firewall profile, I'm going to go next. You won't see any rules in here at all. There's no rules, but you have all of those again. Tri-state configuration for these settings where I want to turn off the firewall for the domain and the private and the public. And when you turn these on, a whole bunch of other settings become available in tri-state form as well. So this is just that base policy that we see the vast majority of customers only having a handful of them, but then they come through and actually create all the individual firewall policy rules and layer those on top of each other. So if I come in and create this preview policy for now and click next, you don't see all of that other stuff like IPsec configurations of domain and public private. We just have the ability to add these firewall rules. So this might be a policy with only 5 or 6 rules in it, but it does a very specific thing, and then we can deploy those out. So this is just the first step in terms of improving some of the firewall experience. I mentioned we want to try and have the reporting in line here as well. There's still a whole bunch of stuff that we want to do to try and make these firewall rules experiences even easier. But this is a key area of investment for us.
Awesome.
Look good.
Really cool. Yeah.
Yes.
It makes sense, right? It makes sense that we don't want another monolith policy with all these rules in it, right? We want to split them out and
100%.
manage them a bit better.
So Matt, I've noticed that at least on the baselines you can export some of the stuff, but so is there the ability natively and on? It'd be great to on each policy to be able to just hit export for the whole whatever I've configured in that thing, and even be able to import, so that I can you don't have to add the compare button everywhere. You could just say, hey, let me just dump these or archive them or save them in source control or whatever, and be able to report out all that information. Maybe you can just pull that from Graph. Maybe Ben's already
can do
got
it
code
from
for
Graph. Yes,
of course you can.
of course you can.
You can do everything in Graph.
I was
That's
just
our
waiting
next
for
module.
I was waiting
Join us
for
next
a gap in the
week.
conversation for me. Like, you can already do that.
Yeah, so for customers who are like all in on info as code and so forth, like there are the APIs and so forth. But I totally get the feedback. We often hear that we want import export specifically for like multi-tenant environments where maybe I have a lab and I want to create a policy and now I'm really happy with it, and now I've got to go to my other tenant and I've got to manually configure all this stuff again. We built the policy duplication as kind of the first step to help customers do the change management side, but I think there's definitely room for us to do import export of these policies, and it's definitely on our list.
Yeah, I mean, there's literal businesses that exist with the sole intent of creating a lab, getting it perfect, and then lifting and shifting that onto client environments. They don't know how to do it, but conceptually, I've spoken to people that have this great idea for a business, and they get us in to go, so how do we move it from the lab? So there's a big need for it to make it simpler. Especially when people just want to be able to press a button and not have to worry about how Graph works, which I agree with, but it's also nice to sort of know how it all works under the hood.
Yeah, we're very well aware of it. I mean, and we've been talking about similar things for baselines for a long time as well. Like, allow me to export my baseline and share it on my blog, and then maybe I could import it and I could have my own custom baseline. So it's definitely front of mind for us. But we'll continue working on that.
Awesome.
So if I could just quickly move on to the EDR side. So this is where the ConfigMgr stuff starts coming in, which is cool. You'll see a couple of different policies in here and a new column in this particular view called target, which is pretty cool. So the EDR policy, we've actually done some work to make the onboarding super simple for customers. So if you've got the MDATP connection already established, so if you come in here and you've got the Intune tenant talking to the MDATP tenant, you don't have to go and download the onboarding blobs or any of the workspace IDs or anything like that. We actually pull it all across on behalf of your organization to make it super easy to do the onboarding. So to do EDR onboarding, all you really need to do is create this EDR policy and deploy it to a client. When the client receives the policy, they receive everything that they need to do the registration into the ATP side, and then EDR is automatically enabled for you. And also is TVM actually. So all you need to do is deploy this, and all of a sudden you'll get the threat and vulnerability management. This policy, as I mentioned before, is an E5. Like, it is an E5 feature. If you don't have MDATP set up and you don't have the connector, there's absolutely no need for you to come in here. But for those customers who have got offline ConfigMgr clients like the servers and the ATMs and so forth, as well as cloud ones, this is the area that you need to go in and create those policies. So if I just create an MDM policy really quickly, so these are just my cloud managed ones. You'll see two new options in here in terms of the platform. So the Windows 10 and later policy is our Intune MDM policy because we don't support server, and our Windows 10 and Windows Server policy is our ConfigMgr on-prem policy because we can support Windows 10 and we can support Windows Server now. So if I just create an MDM one, for example, we've made it pretty clear here in terms of the policy type. But if I create this here and go next, I've only got two settings here because I'm not asked for the workspace ID and so forth. I could leave these not configured and the onboarding will still happen. And you'll see here in the assignments, this is probably the most important bit. This here is the Azure AD group assignment like you would for any old MDM policy, right?
Yep.
And the difference between these two policies is really the targeting. So if I now go in and create a Windows 10 and Windows Server policy, it's exactly the same name, but we've got ConfigMgr tags on it. I'm going to create this. I'm going to give it a dummy name.
Yeah, it's good naming convention you've got there.
Yeah.
I've got so many policies called ASDF in my tenant. It's ridiculous.
We like underscores in ours, so
Yes. Adam's very concise with the underscores.
You can see those same two policies, those same two settings are available, but the difference is in targeting, right? So before we had the Azure AD groups that we're targeting, this time we're looking at configuration manager collections, right? So if I select collections, what I can then see is the collections that I've synced from my on-prem ConfigMgr site, right? So now any device be they a server or a client, whatever they are, that's in all systems. If I was to target that, they're going to receive this policy. If I was going to target SQL servers or desktops, we handle them all just like you would expect, an MDM targeting of them to do. And then once we select this and go next and hit complete, I just won't target this to anything. What we do at the meta side, the Intune side, is we bundle up a ConfigMgr policy and we now send it down to ConfigMgr.
Yeah.
And in fact, I could probably create one and let's just assign it and see if it shows up with what's this podcast name again?
Intune.training.
Intune.training. Let's see if we can get this. You wanted a demo to fail, right? So let's see how this goes. Let's go with our SQL servers. So just consider this from like a sec admin point of view. To do this EDR onboarding for those ConfigMgr clients, they would have to be calling their IT team. They would have to be begging and pleading for them to forget about all their work around patching and OSD and so forth and go and do this for them just to get them into ATP. That now once we've got this console, they can just go off and do that themselves. Obviously, if they've got the right RBAC controls and so forth. But you can see here now it's been created. It says it's unassigned. I don't know why that maybe it takes a couple of seconds. But there it goes. There it goes. And then let's go to Configuration Manager, and maybe we should restart the SMS exec service to make it really hum along as well.
Come on, demo gods.
This is just a VM running on my Lenovo X1 here as well, so Sweet. It's not going to be super snappy. But if I go back to
we've all got money riding on at what minute mark it fails. So who's up right now?
Getting nervous now. So this is one that I'd created previously. You can see here that the policy name was the same one that was in my Intune console. Yep. It's the EDR onboarding for ConfigMgr servers. You can see the action is remediate and the compliance is 100%. And the way that this works is it basically uses a lot of the DCM info that we've had in the past to do device configuration, right? So again, this client that's actually showing up in here is my ConfigMgr server. I don't have a Windows client. This is my server that's now been onboarded to ATP because that DCM baseline is run. Not because the server is talking to Intune or the client's talking to Intune. Everything's running via the ConfigMgr infrastructure. And you can see here that this is just running as compliant. So every time you create one of these configurations and deploy it to a collection, you'll see a new DCM style baseline show up in here. Let's see if it has SMXX restarted. Yeah. Let's see if this is going to show up for us. Wouldn't it be great? Console's going to freeze now.
I'm backing a successful demo, guys.
So am I.
I got a lot of money riding on this though, Matt. So
do we need to close the console before?
Yeah, maybe.
After SMS exec restart?
I don't think so.
Sometimes.
I haven't worked
not
on
often.
ConfigMgr for a while.
I feel like I've just time traveled back to 5 years ago when I was doing SCCM work.
Config Manager, come on now.
Hey, 5 years ago it was SCCM.
That's right.
Look at that red line. I love it.
My laptop was doing that earlier.
Super slowly.
Yeah, I just had to close all of my Edge browsers because I was redlining while we were doing this video.
I keep hitting 99% CPU, and then it just spikes, and I kill everything, and it doesn't go away.
Yeah, I think because I've got Teams running with video and everything at the moment, sharing my screen. It's smashing my PC.
He's running on a Surface Go, probably.
I don't want to like call anyone out, but in the last week, Teams has been a real memory hog when sharing screens.
Yeah.
So how about we come back to this a little bit later? I've restarted the ConfigMgr console. Let's come back and see if it shows up.
Sure.
It's a brand newie, but yeah. So I suppose the output of this and like the end state is that we've got this new admin console that's dedicated for those sec admins. The clients are going to be onboarded and configured, whether or not they're MDM managed and cloud attached, or whether or not they're tenant attached and they're just on-prem. And hopefully we get to this point where the sec admins can just be granted the right permissions in the Intune console. We have an RBAC role specifically for this persona, the Endpoint Security Manager role, which just gives them access to this. That admin can't come in and create autopilot profiles or anything. They can only manage the security configuration.
That's really
and
cool.
then we have this single pane of glass for all the security management and reporting. We're pushing ahead with each one of those workloads being available in Tenant attach. As I mentioned, all of this stuff will work right now for co-managed clients, so continue co-managing those clients and swing them across, and then in the future months and few months we'll start enabling each one of these left nav workloads down to the ConfigMgr on-prem clients as well. Any questions on that, guys? Let's see if this is coming back now.
It all
Fingers crossed.
Sounds logical to me, and it's awesome to see that it's coming into the platform.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the big one for me is the visibility that we now get in the same blade. So with the AV stuff as an example, where we can sit there and see that information straight away and go, oh, these computers have issues, I need to do stuff.
Totally.
From an operational point of view, I think it's been really needed as well. So I mean, I'm sure you're well aware of like all the investments we've had over reporting in the last 12 months. They'll start lighting up month after month, and we couldn't really do that without doing that reporting work as well. So I think it's a good time. We can there's still work to be done, guys. That's for sure. Under no illusions that this is complete. But I think when I talk to customers about this vision and how it's how it's heading, I think it makes a lot of sense for customers and really resonates.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is amazing.
This isn't showing up for me, so
like,
you got your demo file, guys. There you go.
Yes.
Welcome to Intune training. Hey, so what you've got to do is that when it does come up, just get a screenshot and put it up on Twitter.
I will. That's a great idea. Yep. That's a great idea.
So I think it's cool that you're pushing stuff the other direction. We've been doing all the stuff where it's like, oh, everything's moving to Intune. It's like, nope. Hey, look, we're showing that you can go back across the bridge the other way.
Yeah, that you can just use this as your central management pane, which is the point.
Yes.
We laugh internally that ConfigManager's now got a web console, right? We've been waiting for this forever, right? And this is the web console.
That's administration service working for you right there. I know it's like, what are you guys calling the ConfigManager graph now? I guess it's two different components happening there. Is that accurate on the back end? Back end?
I'm not well versed with the ConfigManager back end. So I'm not going to get myself in any sort of trouble.
Fair enough.
So that's what I got for you today, guys, in terms of like the demo and have a poke around on all this. I'm very happy to answer it. I'm sure your long list of questions while we got some time left. Or did I answer them while we're going?
Oh, I have more. I'm waiting to see what they have.
I have. It's not even a question. It's a is this happening? Is it a feature that's going to be? So we've got security baselines, much like we have in Config Manager. Do you know, can you say whether we're ever going to get baseline remediation?
Baseline remediation.
So, in Config Manager, we have the ability to sort of report on or, run a custom script or whatever that gives us some kind of value. And then based on that value, whether it's what we wanted or whether it's not what we wanted, it then goes and automatically does an action that we've defined. Is that a thing that you reckon is going to appear?
So like custom baseline remediation you're talking about, or are you talking about more like our security baselines? Because
I mean, it could be the custom ones that are sort of the out of the box ones, or it could be custom.
So our security baselines in terms of the security configuration all do a configure, right? They all do remediation. One of the challenges that we have with the Windows platform is that it's actually really hard to pull configuration without first doing the configuration.
Sure.
So we have asks all the time on why can't we just like do an audit only mode for the security baselines. I'd like to see what's going on out there, and then tune it as I need to. And the MDM platform doesn't actually give us a lot of flexibility on doing that.
Yeah.
So there's other ways that we're exploring around that. Maybe with the ATP integration and things, because they can do some configuration checks and so forth. So for security baselines, we already have remediation, but we don't have really audit only. I think Jordan was talking about like, let me just arbitrarily run anything I want, check, detect whether something's configured, and if it isn't configured correctly, then remediate it.
Yeah.
We don't have, out of the policy team, we don't have any, I can't even think of the right word. We don't have anything in the book to achieve that.
Sure. Okay.
We're really looking at configuration as a structured object. It's this is what the platform supports, is what we're going to allow.
Yeah.
We did ship the the PowerShell configuration from a couple of years back. There might be some room to do some detection and remediation as well. But from a policy configuration and a device configuration point of view, I don't have anything in my backlog for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could do that with Win32 apps, Ben, where you'd have detection
with
the PowerShell
but
script do action, but then you don't have the reporting
exactly
the problem before you actually fix it.
Yeah. It's very easy for me to do what I'm talking about right now in a hacky way. It's more just like all the pieces exist. We can push out scripts. We can detect on things. So all it needs is just a nice shiny front end and a little bit of reporting, so that we can show that action has happened or action has been triggered. This is kicked off. It'd be a huge win, and I know a lot of people are asking it. So yeah,
I know that there are some efforts to provide specific functions for a specific reason, if I can say that, with like a really political. I don't own any of those features, so I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody.
Sure.
There's work that kind of fits into that mold that you're talking about, but we don't see it as a policy configuration. Service, right?
Sure.
When it comes to policy, we really want to honor what Windows supports and not really try and go too far out of that boundary, right? We don't want to recreate DCM. We definitely don't want to recreate DCM, because then what happens is everybody's PCs slow down because the DCM baseline is running every hour to do some remediation checks and so forth, right? We have the MDM channel for our cloud managed devices, and we're kind of sticking to that when it comes to configuration. We always want to open up more. So like the ADMX side, for example, we know that there's gaps in the MDM stack from the CSP point of view. So we wanted to open that up to ADMX and things as well. And we will be shipping some ADMX import features, so you can do that for Chrome and things as well.
That's cool.
But for those I just want to run a script and configure my device myself, we don't have any intentions of doing that.
Sure.
So I think in one of our previous videos, it was the one where we did our first look of this, and we went over to the Azure portal, and we're looking in there and saying, okay, so what exists in both places and things, and we discovered, there's new stuff that's only in the endpoint portal. And I believe there was I don't know that it was widely advertised, because but there was a notice that showed up, I think, in the message center on the Microsoft, on the backend admin.microsoft, that basically said, hey, the access to Intune through portal.azure.com is moving to endpoint.microsoft.com to the MIM admin center. And so I guess the point being is that if you're watching this and you don't realize, he's at endpoint.microsoft.com. We did not go to portal.azure. And if you go to portal.azure and go to Intune, you're not going to see the same things there. This node does not exist, and some of these features do not exist. Some of them are there, but not all of them, and that's intentional. And I think they said what the date is, like August or so.
Yeah,
where
August
that's
1st.
transition.
It's actually, if you go to the portal through portal.azure, there is a big red flag at the top of that
red,
telling you purple. Sure, I can't remember. But yeah, there's a big red purple color.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is. Okay.
Saying, hey, don't go here anymore, basically.
Matt, since you're sharing your screen, can you just pop over to portal.azure and
do it?
Just since we're talking about it, this is the way.
It actually feels weird for me to come across the old Azure portal now and look at this old left nav and reminisce. But yeah, here we go.
There you go. Can you possibly ++ on your browser a little bit? Sorry, I'm not trying to drive you, but
He is.
We've read the comments before. People like us to Zoom.
Yeah, so in terms of the products, like I mean, all of our investment, shifted to DMAC and then MEMAC, if you will, which is just the same as DMAC, like probably 12 months ago. So we're really encouraging customers to come across here and use this. Obviously, the big purple or red banner telling customers to go and do that, is the formalizing of that. Everybody should move across. As I mentioned, it feels weird to be back here and seeing ebooks, so prominently on our left nav that it must be such an important feature that is there.
I'm curious to know how many people have actually deployed ebooks, because I've only ever done one book for this video, this podcast, and it now lingers in the Tenant because.
I'm sure I'm going to start pushing this out to the client, to where I work now, right?
Yes, but it only works on iOS devices.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sure there's lots of EDU folks who love that it's on their, like on the left nav for them, and they won't want to come across to the mem console.
I'm going to put
the
in
best
a feature
part is
request
the
for
book
ebooks.
that we pushed out is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. That's the one.
Yes.
Well done, Steve. Yes, like it. And can you clarify? There's actually a Twitter discussion about this the other day. So, devicemanagement.microsoft.com, is that URL going to just redirect to Endpoint, or are you going to still maintain both of them?
I've got no idea. No
Okay.
idea. I would assume that it's going to go away and Endpoint will just be the one, but I'm not the authoritative source on the URLs of Intune, unfortunately, or Endpoint Manager.
Well, do you want to check your lab one more time?
Ooh.
Give you one more chance at redemption.
I will just on the URLs. I will say one other thing, just quickly, is if you go to aka.ms forwards, I'm gonna make me type here in front of everybody. Endpoint Security. We drop you directly into the Endpoint Security node as well. So for sec admins or people who don't want to land in the portal and see all the other stuff, it's pretty easy just to kind of collapse that and go, now I've just got my cool. Dedicated security management console as well. So let's have a quick look at ConfigMgr and see if that's no good. Come on. Hey,
Yes.
hey,
There it is. There we go.
Pay up, Adam.
Fair enough.
So there's some sync periods that need to
Sure.
go through. I mean, it's not instantaneous, but
It
at
doesn't
this
have
point,
to be instantaneous either. I mean, let's be real here. Once we've created the policy and we have a relatively strong trust in the deployment solution, if it takes 5, 10, 15 minutes, that's how long it takes.
Yep.
Yeah, we need to kind of balance that though. I mean, for an EDR onboarding policy, like maybe it isn't super important to be timely, but maybe an AV exclusions policy it is. So when we're thinking about security teams who are using this, we absolutely need to make sure that we're balancing it. Sure. Like we don't want to be running, DCM baselines every 5 minutes. But if there's something that's if there's a threat that's starting to spread around my network and I need to block that port really quickly, we need to balance that. So
sure.
I don't think we've really locked on how quickly all this should happen. EDR isn't as important for us to be super timely, but we are really thinking about all this from the security admin's point of view and what they would expect of their security products. So
maybe they need to add a big red button to go along with the big green button for ConfigMgr to just instantly force the sync or something.
A go fast button.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but if we all go fast, then we all go slow, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
And that's the trade-off.
Yep. Yeah, you can't have everything be instant, or else none of it will be instant. So you got to decide what's priority.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, the ConfigMgr team solved this back in the day with the BGB2, right? That was primarily designed back years ago to solve for the endpoint protection profiles, right? To be able to update, AV clients for on-prem clients as quickly as they possibly can, and that it was designed for that. It's used for obviously a lot more now, but all that learnings that we've had through ConfigMgr over the years is definitely helping us make the right design and engineering decisions on how we should build this. So, it's not new to us, that's for sure.
And the thing I want to point out here, if it's like, I mean, I'm looking at this and like, you didn't just sync a policy down to the console that then I have to go in the console and do something with. You literally have deployed a policy down through basically the configuration baselines engine for the client, and it's as soon as those clients pull in and run their CIs, they're going to get that.
You absolutely don't have to come into this console at all. Like you don't need to see the server at all. You can see that there's the policy name. You can see the collections it's assigned to. You can see it's going to remediate, and when the client checks in, which is the server here, it's going to receive that baseline. It's going to trigger it, and it's going to report back up. So,
and it will it report all the way back up to Intune then and show me the compliance status there? I mean, I think it does. I just want to verify.
Yeah, so for the public preview that we just released, we're just showing the overall status of that baseline. So you'll see here we have a donut chart of whether or not how many clients were successful and not successful. You'll see that there's like a devices status list missing here. This is actually one of our summer interns is working on exposing at the device level, so we can see which devices individually received it and which ones failed.
Sure.
But for the public preview, you'll at least get the donut chart to tell us which client, how many clients were successful versus unsuccessful. And EDR is a really basic policy too, right? So we think for the public preview that's enough just to see 100% of my devices have successfully run it. But when you start looking at like AV and you're wanting to make sure real-time protection turned on and things like that, we need more granular reporting. So that will come a little bit later.
Well, and I think the thing that really that adds on to this. So if you talked about not having, your security guy doesn't have to go into the ConfigMgr console. So would you navigate over to the devices node and find a tenant attached only, or I guess tenant or co-managed device, either one would show.
Devices.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've got any synced in here. Let's have a look. Managed by, I think it'd be just Configuration Manager. There we go. There's my ConfigMgr server. That's the server I'm running it off.
Awesome.
So you can see that in there. Again, because we don't have the per device status, we don't have any reporting on whether or not that was successful, but that will be worked over the summer. So.
But the thing I was going to show though is that you had a sync policy option there, and so you go to the EDR, you go configure it, you deploy it, and then once it's synced, then you can just sync your devices to sync their ConfigMgr machine policies, which would then get them to check in and pull that down and start processing.
How good is that for a security team? Like they don't have to know the server name that they're going to log into. They don't know to have to where to look in that huge ConfigMgr console. They just come in here and they see the devices and
click
they
a button.
go sync.
And as long as their device or their security is in such a way they can log in anywhere into this portal, they don't even have to be on premises at all to do this. They don't have to be on a company device. You can do this on your mobile phone if you want.
They could be quarantined.
It depends on if you got conditional access there, Adam.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, so as long as you're depending on your corporate
trusted
security,
device.
depending on your corporate security, you may or may not be able to get in to do this, but you could potentially.
Very cool.
This is awesome, Matt. Yeah. Wow. We did. I think we're going to delete our previous deep scratching the surface of this because wow, we didn't do it justice. This is fantastic.
Yeah, we've obviously worked pretty hard on trying to pull these experiences together. I released a blog post just this week with a lot of like the higher level stuff around like the security and IT teams as well, and I'd encourage everyone to take a look at that because that's the sort of thing that's easier just to send out to the security team and say like this is the reason why we're doing this. Yeah. But I think for for the vast majority of customers that we speak to, more than the vast, it's almost 100%, when they're looking at buying their M365 stack and using security and management, like this just makes so much sense to them. And every customer we talk to is really excited about it. So it's a lot of work, but I think it's important work, and I'm glad you guys seem to like it.
Definitely.
No, it's awesome, and we're so happy about this.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have anything else?
I'm good.
No? All right.
I do, but I don't think it fits in the purview of this conversation, so we'll leave it.
Oh, you're gonna leave a teaser out there. All right, fair. All right, Matt, do you have anything else?
I'm good. Just a big thank you to all for having me. Looking forward to seeing the video, and follow me on Twitter, and feel free to ask any of the endpoint security questions that you need. I can't answer all of them, but I do my best to answer most of them.
Awesome.
I hope everyone tries it out and gives it a go. It's all in GA now, so you should be able to go and create those policies for the co-managed clients. If you've got ConfigMgr and you're upgrading it to 2002, you'll see a new KB pop up. I think you saw that in Twitter today, Adam. You noticed it. Install that, and all this will start working for you as well. So please go out and use it, and send us feedback.
Awesome. Well, as we mentioned in the beginning, we will include the links to all the stuff that we've talked about. And yeah, thank you so much. And come back anytime. Let us know if you got more new stuff, cool stuff you want to come talk about. We'd love it. So thank you very much, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks.